Were you a fan of pepper jack cheese? Maybe you liked it melted in a slice on a burger or in a sandwich. Maybe you just like the mild sweet taste of the jack cheese without the peppers. Well, regardless, today I am going to show you this jack cheese spread recipe that is healthy, no oil, and vegan. I'm also going to show you how to preserve this jack cheese spread in jars for your pantry. So convenient. Welcome back to Comfort Food Farms, the plant-based home cooking channel. If we haven't met before, I'm Kari Gregor. I'm glad you've tuned in. Let's get into it. Prepare the jars for canning. They have to be sterilized and inspected. Run your finger around the rim of each jar to check for chips or other imperfections that will affect the seal of the jar. And, generally visually inspect the whole jar to make sure that there's no cracks, there's nothing going to interfere with the canning process. Now the lids. It's generally recommended to use new lids every time you hot water bath can. That is just wise advice because they get damaged when they're opened or whatever. This canner has a wire rack that is very helpful for lifting up and putting the jars down into the hot water. It also keeps the jars above the bottom of the pot, and that's important because we don't want the glass sitting right on the bottom of the pot. You can do a canning without having a canner like this, but you just need to put something that's going to help prevent the jars from sitting directly on the bottom of the pot. Even though these are new lids, I'm going to put them in so they get boiled in the water and get sterilized. The rings, you do not need to boil them because they don't actually come in contact with the food. Fill the canner so that it covers the jar to about an inch. I've got about an inch or an inch and a half here. Put it on the stove, set it to boil, and let it boil for about 10 minutes to sterilize those jars. This recipe calls for 1.5 cups of plant-based yogurt. The yogurt needs to be unflavored and unsweetened. If you want to make your own, there's a link here in the bio or in the information card above. Now you have to soak the cashews. We've got 1/3 cup of cashews. Soak them or boil them for 10 minutes and drain them. Add 1 tablespoon of miso and 1 tablespoon of sugar. Next, we have 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast and 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. 5 tablespoons of tequila. This alcohol gives a lovely flavor to the cheese and it gets cooked off in the end. Don't worry, this cheese is not going to get you drunk any more than eating vanilla cake would get you drunk from the vanilla. Add 1/3 cup of water. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. 1.5 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. When you make it yourself, you have total control over the fat, salt, and sugar. However, if you want to preserve this jack cheese sauce or jack cheese spread for your pantry, you must stick to the amounts of salt, sugar, vinegars, acidic juices, liquors, any of that that's in the recipe. You must stick to those amounts. These things are all natural preservatives, and they contribute to the pH level of the jack cheese spread. They are the things that make it possible for us to have a low enough pH so that this can be preserved in jars for the pantry. Good information? Give us a thumbs up below. Click the subscribe button and ring the bell so you will know when another video is posted. To the blender. Run the blender a total of 6 minutes. You may have to break that up so that you don't overheat your blender. Next, we're going to add the thickeners. 2 tablespoons of tapioca flour or tapioca starch and 1 tablespoon of agar powder. If you want to use this cheese as a dip or a sauce instead of a spread, don't add the thickeners. I wouldn't jar preserve it without the thickeners. We are going to can this batch, so I'm adding the tapioca starch and agar powder to the blender. Pulse it to combine, pour it into a saucepan to thicken it. At this point, you can add dried peppers if you want a pepper jack spread. Start with half a teaspoon of red pepper. You can add a pinch of dried jalapeno pepper and a pinch of dried habanero pepper at your own risk. The more you add, the hotter your cheese will be. Cook it on medium-high heat, stirring constantly until it thickens. Remove the jars and lids from the hot water in the canner and lay them on a clean towel. Ladle the hot cheese spread into jars, leaving a ½ inch of head space. That's the space between the cheese and the lid. Use a knife to dislodge any big bubbles around the sides of the jars. When we're hot bath canning, we don't want those bubbles to be too big. Take a paper towel soaked in white vinegar and run it around the rim. That just disinfects and sterilizes it. Put the lid on and screw on the ring. You want to screw it just so it's finger tight. Maybe tighten it as much as you can and then bring it back a quarter turn. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. Now it looks like I do not have enough for another jar. There's just too much head space there. I'm just going to put this into the fridge. I'm not going to can it. I'm sure we're going to use it up on quesadillas or something very soon. You can multiply this recipe so that you get several jars. I'm actually only doing 1 jar of this, but I'm going to combine it with doing the cheddar spread. So might as well do as many jars as we can when we're doing a hot water bath can. Put the jars into the canner and make sure that you've got enough. We need at least 1 inch of head space between the top of the lid and the surface of the water. Bring it back to a boil, and this is the type of boil you want, a nice rolling boil. Set your timer for 20 minutes. This is when we start timing, when it gets to be boiling. You don't want it boiling so much that the jars clang together and crack or something because the boil is just too violent. Go to your canner after the timer's gone off, shut the heat off, and just let it sit for about 10 minutes. That's been actively boiling, and we don't want to have anything have a problem when we take it out. Pull the rack up and use a jar grip to remove the jars from the canner. Isn't that beautiful? Look at, there's our jack cheese. Gorgeous. Don't touch them again for several hours. leave them on a rack to cool. I'm going to leave these overnight to cool. The next day, I check and see if they've sealed, and then put a label on them, and they're ready to go into the pantry for when we want cheese. Now, the bit that we didn't can, I'm going to use as a spread on tortillas here to make some quesadillas. I've got corn quesadillas, and isn't that stuff beautiful? Delicious, delicious cheese. Yum. Look at that beautiful melted jack cheese. A little bit of salsa. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Not gonna miss quesadillas anymore. Well, if you found the information in this video helpful, give us a thumbs up below. And while you're down there, click on the subscribe button and ring the bell so you will receive a notification the next time a plant-based recipe is posted. Thank you for watching.